Good evening. Welcome to Criminalist Behavior Podcast, the podcast that takes you deep into the heart of Louisiana's history and current, most chilling true crime stories. I'll be guiding you through the darkness of these crimes and all of those involved. Each week, we dig deep on those forgotten crimes or those crimes currently happening with the underlying legends that continue to haunt us. So lean in, listen, and get ready because true crime is anything but ordinary. Stay with me as we unravel what happened in these mysteries. Today we're on episode number 45, and this is the abduction, rape, and murder of Stephanie Lynn Hebert. If this is your first time listening, hi, my name is Stephanie, and I'm your host for Criminalist Behavior Podcast. I want to first and foremost thank you for listening to the show, and I really hope that you enjoy it. So, trigger warning, this episode may contain content of a graphic nature, including descriptions of physical and sexual violence against adults, children, and animals. Listener discretion is advised. So we're in the week of Christmas, and I am trying to hit 50 episodes for the year, so you're probably going to get a little extra content this week because, yeah, we had those issues with the hurricane, sickening, and just life, right? So I will be posting probably 2 this week and 2 early next week to bring in 50 for 2024. I really want to thank all my fans and committed listeners for listening to the show. And if you haven't already, please do hit that subscribe, follow, and like button and give us a rating on your Apple Podcasts. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Also, you could always reach out to us and request any type of case you want to hear, or if you have any other information about a case that was already covered, or you just want a shout out, or you want to be a guest on the show, hit us up. I would love to hear from you. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'm just going to jump right on into this case. And before I do, I'm sorry, one more quick little side note. Somebody made the comment to me that the podcast is really good. I just need to work on the sound. Well, I'm trying to set up a good little studio area. I got 2 microphones and a sound bar. I just got to figure out how to exactly use it, what programs to use to be able to tweak it. So bear with me, but I am working on that so y'all can get a better quality sound. And yeah, y'all just stick with it, okay? I greatly appreciate it. All right, so Stephanie Lynn Hebert was born on June 30th, 1972, and she was the beloved daughter of Donald and Joyce Hebert. She lived in Waggaman, Louisiana, and in May 1978, Stephanie graduated kindergarten at Live Oak Manor Elementary School. And June 13th, 1978, on a blazing hot summer day, Stephanie, at age 5, left her Astor Lane home in Waggaman, Louisiana around 2:30 p.m. She went to play at a neighbor's house, and she was never seen again. She was wearing a pink checkered top, pink shorts, and her ice blue prescription glasses. She was also barefooted, and she was described to be about 4 foot tall, weighing about 45 pounds, with blonde hair and blue eyes. She had a light complexion, and she had a birthmark on the right side of her back. But as she started going towards her friend's house, she actually never made it to her friend's house. And she didn't return home for dinner, so that's when her parents knew something was wrong. Stephanie's frantic parents began scouring the neighborhood in and out the house just in case they might have missed something. But then they immediately called the police and made that missing report. And once the police were contacted, an air and ground search was conducted that night for Stephanie, and she was last seen near the Waggaman Gymnasium, according to some of the residents in the area. Sheriff's deputies, auxiliary officers, and Waggaman residents were combing a wooded area near Astor Lane and the St. Charles Parish line that day on foot and in helicopters searching for little Steph. About 100 deputies at the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office and 35 to 50 volunteers concentrated on a large segment of their search on that following day in the thick wooded area covering many acres of fringes alongside the Mississippi River community. The headquarters for Wednesday's search was set up at the Live Oak Manor Volunteer Fire Department on Azalea Drive and Gardena Lane, where one of the section of the wooded area began. There was some officers with police dogs who was pushing through the thick woods, and they actually resumed everything that they searched on Tuesday because it was night, and they wanted to recover that area just in case they might have missed some clues, and they just want to be sure for certain Stephanie was not in that area. Joyce and Donald Hebert, Stephanie's parents, were part of this massive multi-day search, and they like I said, scoured the neighborhoods, and the search was conducted by FBI agents, journalists, psychics, and thousands of volunteers. Her parents held a press conference to plead for her safe return. The search was called off shortly after dark on Wednesday and was scheduled to resume at first light on that Thursday morning. Bulldozers were brought in late Wednesday to begin digging into the intense foliage in the area. And Thursday morning, June 15, 1978, there was somebody who spoke about seeing a middle-aged woman wearing heavy makeup and colored tennis shoes in the area. So deputies went around looking for that middle-aged woman wearing heavy makeup and colored tennis shoes, who could have been at least a witness or maybe someone with 5-year-old Stephanie in the Waggaman area. So there was a woman who was selling ice cream and cotton candy from a truck that told Lieutenant Harold Clybert that 5-year-old Stephanie Lynn Hebert was seen at the truck purchasing cotton candy, accompanying the woman wearing the heavy makeup and the colored tennis shoes. The truck vendor told deputies that she sold a woman and a child 2 sticks of cotton candy between the hours of 4:30 and 5 p.m. on the corner of Dandelion Street and Astor Lane. But Clybert said investigators do not know if that ice cream truck and the potential suspect with the heavy makeup and colored tennis shoes are actually connected. It was another lead that they had to check out, and they did not see that woman in the area, nor did they see Steph after being told this type of information. There were hundreds of supposedly sightings of Stephanie that were reported, but none of them panned out. As the search continued, it ended up being Stephanie's 6th birthday on June 30th would actually pass, and she was not there. And you remember how I said that ice cream truck vendor said that she sold cotton candy to a child and older woman sometime between 4:30 and 5 p.m.? She literally claimed that the little girl that she sold that ice cream to looked exactly like Stephanie. But despite the massive search, that woman, nor Stephanie, like I said, was ever to be located. So thousands of searchers kept scouring the countryside and the forested area. Helicopters buzzed overhead, focusing nearby the Mississippi River and its banks. And investigators, FBI agents, they meticulously searched the Hebert home while Stephanie's parents met with reporters to plead for their child's return. There were psychics that were brought into the case, and they stated that they knew where Stephanie was, but those avenues proved to be unsuccessful. So 5 months later, in November of 1978, there was a partial skeletal remains that was found by a hunter in a wooded area down a Shell Road in rural St. Charles Parish. Now, this was 21 miles away from Waggaman, Louisiana, where Stephanie lived and was last seen. But the hunter found the skeletal remains of what appeared to be a child. And after investigators combed the area, it was learned that the child was Stephanie Lynn Hebert. Stephanie was tied to a tree, and she had been dead for approximately 6 months. Likely since the time she went missing. Ropes had been secured around her remains, and her clothing and her eyeglasses were on the ground right beside her. Animals had literally took her bones and scattered them throughout the area. Sheriff's office did not speculate what might have happened to cause the child's death, but they all were realizing that it had to be a kidnapping that took place. The fear of this was magnified because there was a recent kidnapping and sex murder of 2 young girls in a nearby town in Morgan City. And they thought maybe Stephanie's case was likely to be connected to those other 2. Lieutenant Hebert stated searches were covering both sides of the levee and that a pair of cut-off blue jeans appeared to be stained with blood was found near the river on Wednesday morning. Investigators don't believe that the jeans are related to Stephanie's disappearance, but they are processing them accordingly to see if any leads would lead to Stephanie or any other case that may be open in the area. Donald, the girl's father, was a 40-year-old fitter working at Avondale Shipyards, and he stated that detectives were very, very thorough in searching for Stephanie. Almost every house on the block, since she was known to be playing down the block with everyone, were searched. Investigators were so thorough, Donald stated that they searched his single-story brick home, saying, let's be sure she's not sleeping in the closet or hiding under the bed. So they distinctively searched the Hebert residence from top to bottom, every nook and cranny. Now, there were 2 people that were supposedly suspects into little Stephanie's murder. One of them was 55-year-old Kerry James Bros Sr., and another was Jason Franklin Sr. Now, Kerry James Bros Sr. was 55 years old, and he was one of 2 people questioned in Stephanie's murder. He was actually arrested in 2010 for manufacturing child porn, and he was released September of 2013. He had long hair as far back as he was a child, and his hair was actually cut prior to him being arrested in September of 2013, which was very unusual, to say the least. And if he did do it, maybe they could talk to him and get him to confess. But then they were questioning Jason Franklin Sr. because there was a child that came forward stating that Jason Franklin Sr. had partaken to it. So let's talk about Jason Franklin Sr. Jason Franklin Sr. was a U.S. Army veteran who was married to Joyce Vinay in 1970 in New Orleans and worked as an electrician's helper. Jason and Joyce bought a home on Astor Lane about 5 houses down from Stephanie Hebert's house, and despite the close proximity, Donald Hebert, Stephanie's father, stated that in 2019 he did not know that Jason Franklin Sr. was living in the area. And by summer of 1978, it appeared that Jason Franklin Sr. was already classified as a serial sexual predator who targeted children. Jay Franklin told detectives his father beat him. So this is Jay Franklin Jr. So he actually went to the police department and he made a report stating that his father beat him and raped him between the ages of 2 and 6. Jason Franklin Sr. forced his son to perform sex acts and act out scenes from pornography he made the boy watch. Jason Franklin Sr. also used his son to lure in other victims, usually young girls, to their home under the pretense of having a play date. Young Jay Franklin Jr., which, to stop the confusion between senior and junior, I'm going to just classify them as a senior and junior when I'm talking about Jay Franklin, okay? So, Junior was sometimes forced to take port into his daddy's acts. So Junior stated that he started talking about the children that he witnessed his father, Senior, rape in front of him. Junior stated that one of those children was indeed Stephanie Hebert. And he said that his father raped Stephanie at least 3 times, separate and apart from her murder. And according to Junior, it was Joyce Vinay who abducted Stephanie Hebert and brought her to Senior. I'm sorry, that just caught me because, like, this is just so disturbed. The woman is supposed to be... They're all supposed to be adults, but, like, this woman apparently lured Stephanie in and brought her to her husband. Fucking sick. Oh, no. So, like I said, Junior stated that his mom, Joyce Vinay, abducted Stephanie Hebert and brought her to his father, Senior. Though the two were no longer married, Vinay still loved Senior, and the two would meet from time to time. She was aware of her husband's acts, and it didn't bother her. So, apparently Joyce had 6-year-old Jay coax Stephanie into their car. Then Joyce drove the children to a house in Luling where Jason Franklin Sr. was waiting. At some point, Sr. put Stephanie into a car and told his former wife to follow him. They drove to the wooded area where Stephanie's body would later be found. Jason Franklin Sr. stripped Stephanie of her clothes and took Polaroid photos of the child, forcing Junior to pose with her. Though Stephanie had kept quiet about the earlier abuse, Joyce argued with Senior about whether this might be a step too far. Indeed, Junior recalls Stephanie tearfully declaring, "I'm telling my daddy," which might have sealed her fate. Had Stephanie maybe not said that she was telling her dad, maybe Senior wouldn't have killed her. Highly unlikely, but it's just a possibility. The argument continued with Joyce and Senior, and Joyce left with Junior. Junior told investigators he saw his father straddling Stephanie, bound to the tree as they pulled away. Junior stated that he recalls Stephanie declaring that she was going to tell her dad, and that's probably what sealed her fate. The argument continued afterwards, and detectives focused on Stephanie's then 16-year-old neighbor, Roger Alexander. She was friends with little sister and attended a sleepover at their house the night before Stephanie disappeared. But Alexander, 60 years old, always maintained his innocence. On a day Stephanie went missing, he was a few blocks away at his cousin's house on Dandelion Drive, helping repair a car. And there were several witnesses that vouched for Alexander because Roger Alexander was not part of Stephanie's case. Still, investigators insisted that Alexander was Stephanie's killer. St. Charles Parish prosecutors presented a case against him to a grand jury, which declined to indict Alexander because why? There wasn't enough evidence to say that Alexander was the one that done it. But the specter of suspicion hung over Alexander's family, and her skeletal remains, Stephanie's, were found by a hunter that was 6 months later on November 29th of 1978. And Stephanie's funeral was held December 9th, 1978 at Our Lady of Angels Catholic Church in Waggaman, Louisiana. She was laid to rest in the West Lawn Memorial Park in Gretna, Louisiana, and she has never been forgotten. And her small hometown of Waggaman is still haunted by her case, and they hold it near and dear to their hearts. So, the case of Stephanie went cold until effort led by Nancy Michelle prompted the district attorney's office and Captain Thornton of Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office Cold Case Squad to re-examine the case. And that's whenever it led to the arrest and indictment of Jason Franklin Sr. Thank the fuck Lord. Jason Franklin Sr. was charged with 3 counts of aggravated rape in 2019. Those crimes involved Stephanie Hebert and 2 other child victims. In 2018, Stephanie's case was reopened, and Jason Franklin Sr., then in his 70s, was arrested for involvement with her abduction and death. Franklin died in prison in January 2022. He could not be brought to trial, but authorities are confident that he was Stephanie's killer, and nearly 45 years later, her case has been officially closed. The district attorney's office was in the process of reviewing the case on Franklin for Stephanie Hebert's death when he died in prison in 2021. Meanwhile, a key witness in the case died tragically in an automobile accident in New Orleans that same year. Despite the outcome and based on the posture of this case in 2021 and the evidence acclimated, investigators closed her case by exceptional means, declaring Jason Franklin Sr. the suspect responsible for her murder. And that's what the Crime Stoppers were stating involving Stephanie's case. So the gravesite details. Now, this might be a little gruesome, so I understand if you want to, fast forward a little bit. So, the date of the death of Stephanie's gravestone is December 9th, 1978, the day her funeral was held. She probably died shortly after she was abducted in June, though, and funeral mass at St. Joseph Catholic Church, and then she was buried in Gretna. So, excuse me. A witness named Tricia was 41 years old at the time of trial. She testified that Daniel Parks raped her when she was 7 or 8 years old. She explained that she grew up in Waggaman, Louisiana, where her family resided next door to Daniel Parks Sr., who had been best friends with her father, Leslie, since high school. Leslie testified that he trusted Daniel Parks Sr. and allowed him to babysit Tricia and her younger brother, Leroy. Tricia described one such location in which Daniel Parks Sr., while watching his own son with Tricia and Leroy at his house, asked the children if they wanted to play hide and go seek, to which they agreed. So, in case you're a little lost, I'm sorry, maybe I forgot to say it, but what I'm about to describe is a case that happened before Stephanie's murder against Senior, okay? So, they were playing hide and seek, and Daniel Parks Sr. directed his son and Leroy to go into his son's room and count to 10. Once the two boys left, Daniel Parks Sr. grabbed Tricia's hand and led her into his bathroom, shut the door, locked it, and turned off the light. When Tricia asked why the door was locked and the light was off, Daniel Parks Sr. explained, "So they wouldn't find us." Daniel Parks Sr. laid Tricia down on the floor and removed her shorts and underwear. Tricia heard Daniel Parks Sr.'s zipper and then felt Daniel Parks Sr. lay on top of her and insert his penis into her vagina. He began rocking up and down and was breathing heavily. Tricia told him that it hurt, and he told her that he was almost finished. Leroy and Daniel Parks Sr.'s son then knocked on the door, saying that they had found them. Daniel Parks Sr. put his hand over Tricia's mouth and whispered into her ear, "If you ever tell anyone, I'll kill your dad and your brother." Then he told her to get dressed and go play. So I'm going to stop right here because that was a lot. That was a lot. They were supposed to be playing hide and seek. He took her into the bathroom and raped her. When she said it hurt it, he said that he was almost finished. Fucking sick. How in the hell do you think that's okay? That is not okay. Years later, Tricia and her children attended a crawfish ball at Daniel Parks Sr.'s house to visit with her father, who was often out of town for work. At some point that day, Tricia walked into the kitchen where Daniel Parks Sr. was stirring a pot of gumbo. She wanted to confront him, but was rendered speechless, so she stared at him and he stared back. He then said, "Do you want to end up like Stephanie? Do you?" Tricia understood Daniel Parks Sr. was referring to Stephanie Hebert, a childhood friend of Tricia's who was also babysat and who was the victim of an unsolved murder in 1978 at the age of 6. Interpreting Daniel Parks Sr.'s remark as a threat, Tricia gathered her kids and she left immediately. Over a decade later, following Hurricane Katrina, Tricia had moved to Arkansas, and in 2012, she called Daniel Parks Sr., confronted him, and told him that she was going to contact the police. And on July 24, 2012, Lieutenant Ralph Sachs of Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office received a long-distance telephone call from Tricia, after which he set up a meeting between Tricia and Detective Kay Horn. In August of 2012, Tricia gave a statement identifying Daniel Parks Sr. as the man who raped her. Following Tricia's statement, detective obtained a search warrant for Daniel Parks Sr.'s residence. And on August 17, 2012, during the search of Daniel Parks Sr.'s residence, Lieutenant Sachs encountered Daniel Parks Sr., advised him of his Miranda rights, and explained the nature of the officer's presence. Daniel Parks Sr. indicated he understood his rights and agreed to accompany the officers back to the detective bureau. Once back at the Bureau, Daniel Parks Sr. was led into an interview room where Detective Holm executed a waiver of rights form with him. So he made him sign a form stating that he's waiving his rights, he's agreeing to talk to them, and he's aware he understands his Miranda rights. Daniel Parks Sr. indicated that he understood his rights, waived them, and provided a statement. In his recorded statement, which commenced at 2 p.m., Daniel Parks Sr. explained to Detective Holm that Tricia had called him about 1 month prior, where she accused him of raping her and told him that she was going to come to New Orleans and speak to District Attorney about it. He admitted that when Tricia was 7 or 8 years old, they played hide and seek, that they may have hidden in the bathroom when the lights went out and might have fallen on top of her, and that they were rolling around trying to get up. He acknowledged that he might have touched Tricia inappropriately, but he denied inserting his penis into her vagina. And that statement concluded at 2:25 p.m. Following that statement, Daniel Parks Sr. provided a second recorded statement, which commenced at 5:29 p.m., and in that statement, he acknowledged that he had been advised of his rights and that he waived them. Daniel Parks Sr. then went on to explain that he and Tricia, who was about 8 years old at the time, hid in the bathroom together while playing hide and seek. While in the dark room, Tricia and Daniel Parks stumbled. When Daniel Parks Sr. hit the floor at the right spot, the hand was in the right spot to feel something, and I guess the animal instinct more or less started to take over. Y'all hear how nonchalantly he said that? He fell, and then all of a sudden this animal instinct took over him. This is when he then admitted that he touched the outside of Tricia's vagina with his hand and became aroused. And Daniel Parks Sr. admitted his penis did come out because he was wearing short shorts, and he attempted to put it near her vagina, but as he made contact with her, he stopped and pulled back. Denied fully inserting his penis, but admitted that the head of his penis might have touched her skin, penetrating approximately 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch into her vagina. He denied threatening Tricia, and this statement concluded at 5:35 p.m. So, right now we got two stories. Then, on a third recorded statement, Daniel Parks Sr. again acknowledged that he understood his rights and remained willing to waive them. He admitted that he made a statement to Tricia to the effect of, "Get out of here before they find you," like they found poor little Stephanie. But he denied that this was a threat and denied kidnapping, raping, or murdering Stephanie Hebert. That statement was concluded at 8:26 p.m. Then we're going to move on to the next day. August 18, 2012, at 3:10 p.m., Daniel Parks Sr. made a telephone call from the Jefferson Parish Correctional Center to his wife. Deputy Eva Banner, the custodian of recorded phone calls at the Correctional Center, authenticated the recording of Daniel Parks Sr.'s telephone call, which was played for the jury. In that conversation, Daniel Parks Sr. repeated many of the same things he said in his statements. He explained that he did something stupid and that he touched the victim with his hand on her vagina, that he was using drugs at the time, and that he was wearing short shorts and it popped out. He stated that he did not do anything, but it was in the vicinity, and that he stopped himself before anything happened. Daniel Parks Sr. asserted that he put the old bird by her vagina, but that it did not go in. He explained that the incident happened in the hall bathroom and that the lights were out while they were playing hide and seek. He said he regretted what had happened and felt bad that he had caused the victim a lot of grief. He further stated that he was glad to get the guilt off his shoulders, that he realized what he did was wrong and that it was in the back of his mind all these years, but he did not want to remember it. Dr. Nia Mehta, the medical doctor of the Audrey Hepburn Care Center at Children's Hospital and an expert in child abuse pediatrics, testified that it is common for children to delay disclosing that they have been sexually abused. One reason that children may delay disclosure is that the child has been threatened with negative consequences if a disclosure is made. Dr. Mehta further explained that over 90% of child sex abuse cases involve perpetrators who actually know the child, often a family member or a care provider, and have access to the child. Tara Phillips testified for the defense that she grew up on the same block as Tricia and Daniel Parks Sr., and that she was around the same age as Daniel Parks Sr.'s son, and that she often spent time at Daniel Park Sr.'s house. She stated that she never saw Daniel Park Sr. do anything inappropriate to children, and that she never observed children exhibit any fear of Daniel Park Sr., and that she never saw children interacting with Daniel Park Sr. Likewise, another witness, Deborah Parks, Daniel Park Sr.'s wife of 41 years at the time of trial, testified she never received any complaints about her husband being inappropriate with children, that her husband has never displayed an improper interest in children, and that she has never seen him do anything inappropriate with a child. She identified her voice in a recorded phone call for her husband while in jail. Daniel Park Sr. actually took the stand and testified on his behalf at 10:30 a.m. on August 17, 2012. Police officers arrived at his house and asked him to accompany them back to the Detective Bureau for questioning, where he remained for 8 to 9 hours. He had not eaten breakfast that morning and had not eaten anything since 4:30 p.m. the day before. He testified that he did not rape Tricia and that he did not have intercourse with her and that his penis never penetrated her vagina. He explained that he told the police his penis may have penetrated her vagina because, as a diabetic, after 8 hours of questioning with no food since the day before, he became tired and lightheaded and said whatever he thought would terminate the questioning. He maintained that he fell in the darkened bathroom and accidentally touched Tricia as he was trying to get off the floor. He did not ever threatening Tricia and explained that his comment about Stephanie Hebert years later was made out of anger at being disturbed while cooking. He maintained that it was not a threat. Daniel Park Sr. further acknowledged that at the time he spoke with his wife on the phone from jail, he had eaten a couple of meals. And on cross-examination, Daniel Park Sr. admitted that his penis accidentally slid out from the side of his cut-off jean shorts when he fell on top of Tricia, and that his penis touched her. He explained that his penis got near her vagina because he was rolling around and trying to get up. This is just sick. Just so fucking sick. So now we're going to get to the indictment. On December 6, 2012, a Jefferson Parish grand jury indicted defendant with aggravated rape upon a juvenile whose date of birth was February 26, 1972, where the victim was under the age of 12, count 1. And with possession of marijuana, second offense, count 2. And Daniel Park Sr. was arraigned and pleaded not guilty to both charges. Following a trial by a jury, a 12-person jury unanimously found the defendant guilty as charged on December 12th of 2013. On January 9, 2014, following the denial of Daniel Park Sr.'s motions for a post-verdict judgment of acquittal in a new trial, the trial court sentenced the senior on count 1 to life in prison at hard labor without benefit of parole, probation, or suspension of sentence. The state dismissed count 2, and senior's motion to reconsider sentence was denied that day, and appealed followed. Tricia testified that Stephanie was her best friend. In Daniel Park Sr.'s sole assignment of error on one of his appeals, he argued that the trial court abused his discretion in allowing the state to introduce testimony that Daniel Park Sr. was likely responsible for the murder of Stephanie Hebert without any evidence to substantiate the accusation. He also contended in that sole assignment of error appeal that evidence of the Hebert crime was not probative of the aggravated rape of Tricia, and that the testimony from Captain Dennis Thornton and Daniel Park Sr. was a major suspect in the Hebert murder case was unfair and prejudicial. Daniel Park Sr. had sought to exclude references to the Hebert case prior to the trial. On October 8, 2013, Daniel Park Sr. filed a motion seeking to exclude any reference to the unsolved Hebert murder case. Following a hearing on October 31st, the trial court denied that motion, and they ruled the following. The purpose is to not show that Daniel Park Sr. had a connection to this other crime. Certainly, the court understands the motion in line on behalf of this defense, but if the purpose is not to show any connection to any other crime, but to show that Daniel Parks Sr. made such a statement to the victim in order to prevent the victim from coming forward, then the court believes that it would be appropriate for that information to stand in trial. So the defense counsel objected to that ruling. The record is with reference to the Hebert murder case. Tricia testified that when attempting to confront Daniel Park Sr. after the rape in his kitchen, he told her, "Do you want to end up like Stephanie? Do you?" Tricia explained that she interpreted this as a threat. And Daniel Park Sr. himself at trial and in a statement to police admitted to making that remark. At trial, he admitted that he made a remark about Hebert, though not as a threat, but out of anger as being disturbed while cooking. And in his third statement to police, which was published to the jury, Daniel Park Sr. admitted saying, "If you don't get out of here, they're gonna find you on the side of the road like they did poor Stephanie." Lieutenant Larry Diaz, who obtained Daniel Park Sr.'s second statement, testified that Daniel Park Sr.'s reference to Hebert warranted further investigation. Captain Dennis Thornton, who obtained Daniel Park Sr.'s third statement, presented a history of the Hebert case to the jury and stated that Daniel Park Sr.'s remark was the biggest lead in the case. He explained that while no physical evidence linked Daniel Park Sr. to the Hebert murder, he had not been ruled out as a suspect. The fundamental rule in Louisiana governing the use of evidence of other crimes, wrongs, or acts in such evidence is not admissible to prove that the accused committed the charged crime because he has committed other such crimes in the past. So basically, they can't say he's guilty because he had similar charges from his past. They have to have factual evidence. However, such evidence may be admitted by certain statutory and jurisprudential exceptions to the exclusionary rule when it tends to prove a material issue and has independent relevance other than showing that Daniel Park Sr. is of bad character. So the statutory exceptions permit the admission of other crimes evidence for proof of motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, and absence of mistake or accident, or when it relates to conduct that constitutes an integral part of act or transaction that is subject to the present proceeding. So basically, it's admissible to prove his character. So, further, the probative value of that evidence must outweigh its prejudicial effect. And Daniel Park Sr. bears the burden to show that he was prejudiced by the admission of other crimes as evidence. So, clearly, evidence of other crimes or bad acts is prejudicial since all evidence that tends to make it more probable than not as an individual committed a criminal offense is necessary. So, in the present case, we find evidence of Hebert murder case was admissible as evidence relating to conduct that constitute an integral part of act of transaction that is subject to the present proceeding. This evidence, formerly referred to as res gestae, is deemed admissible because it is nearly connected to the charged offense that the state could not accurately present its case without reference to it. In the State versus Taylor, the res gestae doctrine is broad and includes not only spontaneous utterances and declarations made before or after the commission of the crime, but it also is testimony of witnesses and police officers pertaining to what they heard or observed during or after the commission of that crime. If a continuous chain of events is evident under the circumstances, the res gestae doctrine is designed to allow that story of the crime to be told in its entirety by providing its immediate context of happenings in the time and the place. So, during one interaction, Daniel Park Sr. threatened Tricia by alluding to the unsolved murder of Stephanie Hebert, who was a child close in age to Tricia, who resided in the same area, in the same neighborhood, and whose Daniel Park Sr. also babysat. That threat, even though it occurred years after the rape, is clearly relevant to and probative of the charged offense. And because the threatening nature of the remark is not evident on its face, details of the Hebert case was necessary to elucidate the meaning of that particular remark. Under such circumstances, they found evidence of the Hebert case served as purpose of res gestae evidence by giving context and meaning to Daniel Park Sr.'s threatening remark. Although this evidence was unquestionably prejudicial, they found that it was outweighed its prejudicial effect because the trial court did not abuse its discretion in permitting and introducing that evidence. So, they found that the evidence at trial, exclusive of evidence of the Hebert case, was sufficient to convince a rational tier of fact beyond a reasonable doubt that Daniel Park Sr. was guilty of aggravated rape. First, Tricia testified that Daniel Park Sr. raped her when she was a child, and the testimony of victim alone is sufficient to establish the elements of a sexual offense, even where the state does not introduce medical, scientific, or physical evidence to prove the commission of the offense. Second, Daniel Park Sr. himself admitted to committing the crime. Although he later recanted at trial, it is the role of the fact finder to weigh the credibility of the witnesses, and a reviewing of court will not second-guess the credibility of determinations of the trier of fact beyond sufficiency evaluations in returning a guilty verdict. The jury evidently found Daniel Park Sr. admission of guilt more credible than his recant. Therefore, even if the trial court erred by admitting the evidence in question, they found that the jury's verdict was supported by other evidence and was surely unattributable to such error in which Daniel Park Sr. was trying to state. So the assignment of error that he filed in his appeal was without merit, meaning it was denied. So the record does not reflect that Daniel Park Sr. was notified of Louisiana sex offender registration requirements in accordance with LARS 15540, which mandates registration of and notification of sex offenders. So the court has found that failure to provide that notification, even where a life sentence has been imposed, is an error patent warranting remand for a written notification. So whenever Daniel Park Sr. was accused previously of all of these vicious crimes and acts of rape and all of this, he never registered as a sex offender. So people in the neighborhood would not know that he was actually a sexual predator, even though at that time he really was. So the state of legislation uniform commitment order incorrectly reflects the offense date as of August 17, 2012, and the adjudication date as January 9, 2014. The evidence at trial showed that the rape occurred when Tricia was 7 or 8 years old, and Tricia's date of birth is February 26, 1972, which means the offense occurred on or between February 26, 1979 and February 25, 1981. The record also reflected that the jury returned its verdict on December 12, 2013, and they remained for correction of the offense and adjudication dates as contained in the Uniform Commitment Order. The clerk of court for the 24th Judicial District Court is ordered to transmit the original of the corrected Uniform Commitment Order to the officer in charge of the institution to which Daniel Park Sr. has been sentenced to. For the foregoing reasons, Daniel Park Sr. conviction and sentences are affirmed. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. The mandatory punishment for aggravated rape and one 24th Judicial District Court Judge, Henry Sullivan, will hand down January 9th. The Jefferson Parish jury, which deliberated about a half an hour, rejected Daniel Park Sr.'s claim that detectives talked him into confessing he raped a child who lived near his home on Evergold Lane. So people who knew and lived by the family wrote this about this. This case of Stephanie has haunted them for years. They stated they used to live next door to the family in Waggaman, Louisiana at 121 Astor Lane. Stephanie and this person's sister were one day apart and were the best of friends. They had just graduated kindergarten, and this person's mom, for some reason, punished them that day and they couldn't go out to play, which is why Stephanie was not at that house. Stephanie and her brother Quentin knocked on the door like usual, and the parents told them that they were punished. That was about noon, and then around 5 o'clock, they remembered Joyce coming over to see if they saw Stephanie. And at that time, this person was 5 years older than Stephanie, but she could remember Stephanie's little face with the blue-rimmed glasses and her pretty blonde hair like it was yesterday. This person stated that Stephanie was a happy little girl. The memories of walking the levee with Stephanie, her mother, looking for her, and dad spending countless hours in the woods searching, helicopters flying overhead, stayed with this person forever. The most haunting memory was in November when Stephanie's mom, Miss Joyce, was outside screaming and crying after getting the news about Stephanie's body being found. This person stated that they hope that this case gets reopened and that Stephanie's family actually gets justice for Stephanie taken from them for so long. They can only imagine that Stephanie's parents are going through not knowing what happened or even why. Another person stated to this family, I remember this case, so sad. I lived in Waggaman at the time of this murder. My childhood friend Tracy and I hung out with Stephanie all the time. I remember. Miss Joyce came to the house frantically to ask if we saw her. Horrible. My parents would not let us out of their sight for what felt like forever. This person stated that the case was still open at that time she was last looking at it, and she heard from a reliable source that they're going to charge someone for Stephanie's murder. This person stated that she always said her neighbor's son did it. She would bet her life on it. The sketch was him in a wig. I just know it and can remember the sketch 30 years later. He was nuts and he needed to pay. This person prayed that they get the SOB and he dies a slow, painful death. And this person also stated that she knew for a fact he was a pervert, always trying to hang out with the little girls in the neighborhood. He also left the state right after Stephanie went missing, which, hello, red flag. So, numerous questions remain in Stephanie Hebert's case. Because, as you could tell, several people were blamed, but there was no one that was ever charged with Stephanie's case. Why did the kidnapper tie Stephanie to the tree? Was she still alive and left in those lonely woods, being tied to that tree? Did she succumb to the elements or an animal attack? Did she die from other injuries? The investigation into her death brought significant attention to issues of violence against women and children and dark aspects of human behavior. This case serves as a reminder of the fragility of life and importance of vigilance in our communities. It is a somber chapter that underscores the need for continued efforts to prevent such heinous crimes and such victims and their families. Foul play was definitely involved. Young Stephanie was such a beautiful little girl. She was full of life, had such a wonderful life ahead of her, for this person to just brutally beat her, rape her, tie her to a tree at just 6 years old. That gets to me. I cannot take children's thoughts. I don't care if I know the child or I don't know the child. Children are a beautiful thing. They don't deserve it. They never asked to be in this world, and they don't deserve to see all this evil. If y'all have any information about Stephanie Lynn Hebert or anything surrounding her case, please contact the Bayou Crime Stoppers. You could be unanimous and please reach out if you know anything involving this case. And if you don't think it's something worth of value, let them decide. Any information is better than nothing. So please reach out. If you enjoyed our show, please rate and review us on any of your podcast apps. And if you're not already, please subscribe to our channel and you won't never miss another episode. And next week, this week, I'm sorry. I'm so used to saying next week because we've been doing one a week. But we're going to be talking about Michael Ashford and Catrice Brown and what they did, which is horrific. But everything that I do is horrific. So thank y'all for being part of the show. If y'all have any information, reach out. Y'all could even message me. We're at Criminal Behavior Podcast at gmail.com. You can find us anywhere at Criminalist Behavior Podcast. We do have a website. It is www.criminalistbehaviorpodcast-LouisianaTrueCrimePodcast.com. Yes, I know it's very lengthy, but it's what we got as our domain. You can also email us. Like I said, I will leave information in the show notes who you can contact. And remember, any information is better than nothing. I hope y'all have a Merry Christmas, and I will see y'all. Actually, I won't see y'all. I will be be with y'all presenting another case in a couple of days, so y'all just look out for that. Until next time, this is your host, Sarah J, and I hope y'all have a good night. Bye.